This is Kirk Hilliard.
And this is Rusty Byrd, Kirk and Byrd Show, and we're blessed to have with us today none other than the great Matt Hatfield of VA Preps. Welcome to the show, dog.
Hey guys, good to be back with you both, Rusty and Kirk. And it's that time of year where we're ready for playoff basketball.
Yeah. Let me just say this about playoff basketball and basketball in general. Like when it starts, it's football season, so it's a little slow. And I'm always like, oh, it's taking forever. And then after Christmas break, it's like everything flies by. Like the month of January flew by.
It does. And I think because you have that dreaded overlap for us that love sports, you get it from fall to winter with football to basketball. Then you get it from winter to spring with basketball and your baseball, softball, your spring sports and so forth. And then you have the mixing of so much going on the holidays. So you have Christmas tournaments, you have people out of town for some of that. You have showcases like we have our one-day Virginia Preps Classic took place a couple of Saturdays ago at Virginia Wesleyan. Had a lot of Tidewater teams, a couple of Virginia teams square off. And then you go straight in some years you have cancellations with weather. Fortunately, fingers crossed, we haven't had those yet. Not at least not too many of those with snow and inclement situations. A couple of years ago we had the last couple of years some COVID situations, but it gets all that kind of blending, and then you have other things going on like the Super Bowl. So a lot of people's attentions aren't and focus isn't on it. Even my own, I've been traveling a lot doing my OD women's basketball radio gig. So it just sneaks up on you. The playoffs come, boom. Like you start the season, you miss some games because some teams are actually getting players back from football. And then next thing you know, teams will jam in 4 games in about 7-8 days. And then you're like, that's almost a third of your conference or district games. And there you have it, voila.
Yep, that's right.
It's a great time of the year, too, with the Super Bowl, playoff basketball, NCAA, the conference teams, the seeds are lining up, and then we've got the combine that'll start next month as well as the Masters. So there's a lot of good things going on. But before we kick in, we are going to cover all classes for VHSL basketball, boys and girls. You can find us, and I'm going to let Matt plug his own because we follow him. And we're at the Kirk and Byrd Show. Just type in the Kirk and Byrd, BYRD. And with the Kirk and Byrd Show on YouTube, please subscribe to us. We're on Twitter at the Kirk and Byrd, Instagram, Kirk and Byrd. And then Matt, I'll set you up. Matt is an encyclopedia because he covers the whole state, multiple sports. So he's going to know about Southwest Virginia. He's going to know about the Martinsville area. We're just talking about some players from down in Wise County and Abington. So VA Preps has a lot of good content. Matt, tell them a little bit about finding you and your content.
Sure, absolutely. They can find us on virginiapreps.com. We're part of the Rivals Network powered by Yahoo Sports. Subscribe today. VIP board gives you some breaking news. We cover sports all year long. I mean, if it's out of season, we still got football stuff. If it's in season, we've got basketball, football, you name it, and all kinds of neat stories. Got probably about 10 different reporters across the state stationed in all various parts, be it Northern Virginia, Roanoke, Richmond, Fredericksburg, Lynchburg area, and myself being based in Tidewater. But we try to get to as many stories as humanly possible in the state, even though it is, almost impossible. And they can follow me on social media, on Twitter at Hatfield Sports, and we have all kinds of different links out for different things. And on our Twitter feed on the site, it's at VA Preps Rivals. So go check it out, and you'll have fun when you do it.
Cool.
And to prove it's good, I'm looking at VA Preps Rivals right now. Matt does a top 10 with honorable mentions for all the classes for boys basketball. And I'm actually looking at that now. So it is really good. Those come out weekly, and that gives you a good look around the state. So kick us off, Rusty. Let's we want to start class 1, or we want to start at class 6, Rusty?
Let's work our way up. Let's start at class 1. We'll get to 1, but when we get to 2, we might be talking about the best team in the country. But go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I tell you what, I got a chance a couple weeks ago to see in person because I watched a little bit on film Lancaster, the Red Devils, who a year ago lost to Washington and Lee, now known as Westmoreland High School, their Northern Neck District rival. They had beaten them a few different times, regular season, district regional playoffs, and then the state semis, they got upset by them. And they had their leading scorer was a freshman. They had the Henderson brothers from Lancaster, and tell you what, they are mighty, mighty impressive to watch. They can really shoot the 3 ball. They play fast and loose. It's a really good team. And it's interesting to note that for Lancaster, second-year head coach in Dwayne Penn, those brothers, though, Troy Henderson and Tyson Henderson, Troy can really stroke it from deep. I think he had about 100 threes a year ago. Tyson can attack the rim. They play relentlessly. They get in transition. They're the favorite. They're unbeaten. One of just a few teams in the state, regardless of classification at the public school level and even private school for that matter, that does not have a loss to date as we chat here now. But even without a traditional big man or post player, they're going to be hard to beat. Now, in their region, you've got a Northampton team on the Eastern Shore that has a 6'7" post guy in Braden Justice. So that'll be an interesting matchup if they were to see them. And they've played some teams at higher classifications. Hung in there for a while with both Maury and Nansemond River in Class 5, beat Granby out of Norfolk in Class 5, so they've been tested. And then in the case of Franklin, the Broncos, Robbie Cutchins' team just won the Tri-Rivers District. They've only lost a couple games this year, one of which was to an out-of-state team from North Carolina in a tournament on MLK Day. The other one being to Brunswick, their district rival, who they've beaten a couple of times, and they have size. They don't have maybe the guard play that Lancaster does. So there's a couple teams to watch out for. And then out west, Auburn, who's a defending state champ, graduated their top scorer in Ethan Milirons. His little brother, Nick, is back, who had a good state championship game. And their dad, who's the coach, Terry Milirons, has a really well-knit group. George Wythe, who plays fast and loose out in Southwest Virginia, they're going to be a factor. There are some teams that could make it interesting. I think the most fascinating state championship matchup would be a Lancaster-George Wythe, because if you like pedal to the metal basketball, a game in the 70s, or dare I say 80s, that would be the one that has the makings to be it if we got that matchup. But you can make a case for 5 or 6 different teams. I think Lancaster coming so close last year and losing it has motivated them and given them that fire and hunger. So they would be my pick right now to capture the crown come March.
Good deal.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Makes me think of this probably predates you, Matt. Ron Reese went to Tennessee and was on Boo Williams All-Stars. He was Franklin. And then of course the great Stiff, Mr. Brian Stiff.
Brian Stiff went to Brunswick.
Yeah.
Won a couple of state championships. Yep.
Yes, he did.
And you know, those schools have some really good programs. And it's funny that we mentioned so many programs that are not necessarily in Southwest Virginia, but they're in other parts of the Virginia that are not that popular. I see Middlesex is in there. So, no, where are they at VCU also, the state finals?
Yeah, all the state finals for every class is at VCU. And you mentioned some fun teams. Obviously, you talk about Brian Stiff, former NBA, UVA, great Denver Nuggets. He went to coach at Old Dominion. Now he's at UNC Greensboro, and he had his 2 sons with him, BJ and Brandon Stiff, that were part of those championship teams that went to play at Old Dominion when he was an assistant with Jeff Jones. But the last team in the state, guys, public school basketball, to score over 100 points per game, it was Suffolk High School in 1988, which was coached by Ed Young, my radio co-host on ESPN 94.1. And it's funny to note, he now coaches Nansemond River, just got his 500th career victory, but he played about, during his state championship or state runner-up here, I forget which one, he'll correct me, I'm sure. He played like 8 schools that were AAA back in the single A, double A, AAA days, including Booker T, and he was 6-2 against those AAA teams. So schools like Franklin or Auburn, or we go up to Class 2, talk about Radford, when they play schools in the Class 2, 3, 4, and even whether they win the games or not, they compete well with them. That's a great sign for them come tournament time. And I think that's what you see as the common thread with a Lancaster, an Auburn, a Franklin, a George Wythe in Class 1. And then as we get up to Class 2 with the likes of Brunswick and Radford, and of course the big mighty giant that we'll talk about, that's arguably the best team in the state, maybe the country.
Yeah.
You took the words right out of my mouth, but I think the difference maker, we would agree, is if you've got a rotation of 6 or 7 and they're good enough, you can compete with any team in the state. It's the old Hickory High School and Hoosiers where they open it up to everybody. But transitioning to 2, we've got arguably at the top John Marshall, an incredible team out of Richmond. Dennis Parker going to NC State, 6'6", more like a shooting guard, swing forward. But there's some other good teams in there also. Matt, do you feel like anybody can challenge Marshall?
No, I'm just going to be kind and say it. There are some other good teams, but nobody's challenging John Marshall. Give you guys an example. I went to see John Marshall live in December. They were playing Lansdowne, a classic school of Virginia Beach, coached by Dwight Robinson, that defends, gets after you, always in the state tournament hunt.
And beat them last year. Lansdowne beat them last year, one of the few teams.
You're right, Rusty, because I was there at that game when Donald Hand Jr., who now plays at Boston College, he's injured right now, but son of former UVA great Donald Hand Sr., they beat John Marshall in overtime at Lansdowne. Now, John Marshall will tell you we had a couple guys out, some COVID situation, injury, you know it, but they beat him in overtime. Now, we fast forwarded this year. Now, Lansdowne had a couple guys out, but they beat Lansdowne soundly by 40 points. It was not even a competitive game, and Lansdowne has not lost to a team outside of John Marshall I believe, in the state. They haven't lost anybody in Hampton Roads, and they're one of the top teams we'll talk about in Class 6. But John Marshall beat them by 40. They've also thumped LC Byrd from Richmond, who's a state contender. I mean, anybody that's come their way, they have just manhandled because
they
their
beat
first
DeMatha.
Yeah, they beat DeMatha. Their first 5. Once you get past Dennis Parker, you've got Latrell Allman, who's one of the best freshmen in the country. You've got Damon Red Thompson Jr. at point guard, who has ascended into not just a Division I player, but a mid to high major Division I prospect. You've got Dominic Bailey, who's sort of that Swiss Army knife, unsung hero who gets after it defensively, makes winning plays, intangible plays, doesn't have to score, and he impacts the game. And then Jason Rivera, who I'll make this bold statement. As great as Dennis Parker is, there are nights when Jason Rivera is the best player on the floor, newcomer that came in from New York, who's getting a lot of Division I attention right now. He's a 6'5", 6'6" wing who's rangy, can shoot it, handle it, pass it. So there really isn't a weakness in their first 5. The only weakness that really you can find is if you get to their second 5, you have foul trouble. Maybe you can hold the ball because we don't have a shot clock in high school basketball. And even then, if someone does that, I'm not sure they beat them.
Yeah,
saw that one year.
There are some really good programs that I just want to, we want more people from different parts of the state watching us, but you get more heavy, obviously Floyd County is out west. Brunswick, we all know where Brunswick is. And then Radford always got a great sports program. Radford is traditionally very well. Virginia High, the great Virginia High in Bristol, and then Greensville, even Clark County out here, which is where Berryville is. But if anybody could beat them, Matt, who would you say has the best chance?
Well, to your point, Kirk, there are some teams. I mean, Floyd County, Brian Harmon's done a terrific job coaching. He's got a 2-sport player in the post, and Caden Swartzel, who's been rather impressive. Gavin Harrington, the guard spot. I like Brunswick seeing some competition. It's been good in the Tri-River District. Virginia High's on the come up. So is Ridgeview, who has a 1,000-point score, and Cannon Hill. What you notice with some of these Southwest schools and teams in the mix here, Rusty and Kirk, is that you see some multi-sport athletes that have translated those skills from be it football to basketball. But I'm going to go with Radford because Rick Cormany's second all-time in VHSL history in wins. They did play them in the state championship a season ago. He does have his son, Gavin Cormany, who can shoot the basketball from deep. They also have Elijah Kelly in the post, who's about 6'7"ish. He's got wing skills, guard skills, and plays the forward spot, and he's starting to blossom before people's very eyes. So Radford plays good enough defense that if Cormany was to hold the ball, you could make a case if he somehow was able to slow the game down that they could be in position to make things interesting. They're the only one that I really see that would stand a chance. I do think you will get some compelling region semifinals, region finals, and even state quarters and state semifinal games that might not include John Marshall. It could be when Floyd County and Radford square off. It could be when you get the Clark counties and Strasburgs going head to head, the Greensvilles and the Brunswicks. So I think you might get a couple overtime games in there. It just might not involve John Marshall.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny also that there's so much size. We were talking about the 7-footer from Abingdon. Abingdon's they've had some great football players down on 81, right above Bristol, on the way to Bristol. But real quick, let's talk about the 7-footer from Abingdon. That's Evan Ramsey. I know you've done a preview or you did an overview of him. Real quick blurb on him, Matt.
Yeah, in fact, it was actually our my colleague Robert Anderson did a nice story we got up on the site. People can go find it up there. He was an all-state performer as a sophomore on an Abingdon team that fell to Hopewell in the state championship during the COVID-shortened season. He has been a really nice rim protector since day one. He got to Abingdon. He's improved his footwork slowly but surely here. Even though he's not an above the rim, throw it down, explosive player, he has good back to the basket moves and hands, which is always a big deal with big men. If you can catch the basketball in the post, turn and get your shot off, who's going to defend a guy at that height? So I like what Abingdon does. They've had a coaching change. They've still maintained a lot of their system and principles. They're going to be a hard out because of their size and ability to also play fast with that size. See, a lot of those teams, when you have a big man, you just become a plodding half-court team. It's not the case for Abingdon. They can play and function when games are in the 60s and 70s. So I think they have a great chance. The thing about the schools out there is in Class 3, they could run into Northside, who's unbeaten. Cave Spring was a defending state champ with a 6'7" stretch pick and pop, and Dylan Saunders is going to Fairleigh Dickinson, plus 3 other starters back from that state championship team. And if you got through those, when you get to the state finals, you might run into the Hopewell, Petersburg, or a team from Tidewater, like maybe a Lake Taylor, who I think could be a year away from being really, really good in the state finals. So there are some, I think Class 3, believe it or not, guys, might be, we always say Class 5 or Class 6 is the deepest in the state. Class 3 has some impressive depth to it. When you talk about Petersburg not being at the top of our rankings, and they got the reigning state player of the year in Chris Fields, who I just watched put up 21 points in a fourth quarter versus Matoka last week. There are some teams towards the bottom of those rankings. Watch out for. You could circle one. If you were doing a bracket, you might have a dark horse that could win the thing.
Yeah. It's interesting because when you go to Class 3, I was just going to do a shout out. Virginia Tech had a linebacker when I was there. Melendez may have been there. And I just forgot his name. I had it. Sean, but they had a linebacker from Abington that was really good. One of the things that I was going to talk about, Sean Lucas.
Oh, yeah.
Hit like a freight train. But
yeah,
Roanoke is a great basketball town, period. You look at the great basketball player, but they've got Northside, Cave Spring, Patrick Henry, Roanoke. Roanoke's got it going on this year. You were talking
William
about
Fleming too. William Fleming's
Fleming.
very good this year, too.
Fleming's a good one. But I mean, they've got some great teams there. Patrick Henry, and we'll talk about 5. But do you I know Cave Spring had a long winning streak snapped, and we'd like to cover. They've had some great players out of Cave Spring. Of course, the big one's JJ Reddick, but they've had plenty of others. They just got a Hall of Fame football player in Rondé Barber. But you mentioned some of those great programs. Who do you see bubbling up to the top, possibly being in the Final Four besides, say, Northside?
Tell you what, I do think Cave Spring can get back to that point because Jacob Gruss is a really good coach. They defend, they're disciplined, well-schooled. He's got other parts to go with Saunders in the paint when you talk about Stark Jones at the point, Cameron Tinsley on the wing, and they can play fast or slow. And I think their experience will matter come tournament time. I like Hopewell a lot. I'm hoping to check them out here soon against Highland Springs in person. I've watched some of them on film. In fact, one of their games with Petersburg. Cameron Mize is a bucket getter who plays with, if you like some of these almost, I say it like NBA type-ish guards that are just streaky, he has almost like a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander type of game to him. He just plays fast and loose and lets it all out. And Hopewell has, you talk about Rusty, the guys that can go, and Kirk, the guys that can go on the bench, the 6, 7, 8. Hopewell doesn't mind subbing guys, not having that drop off. So I like the way that they involve more than one piece. And Coach Edmonds won a state championship just a couple years ago. So if I was picking a Final Four, I'm going to go for sure Hopewell, Northside, Cave Spring. The 4th spot is up for grabs. I think it could be a team out of Tidewater. I'm liking Lake Taylor a lot. And the reason I like Lake Taylor is I think they're going to set the groundwork to make a state championship push next year because they're very junior, sophomore heavy. And a couple of those names we talked about, one particular from football, Elijah Moss Washington, 6'7", wide receiver stud. He had a game recently where he had 25 points, 12 rebounds. They lost a 12-point lead in our Virginia Preps Classic at Virginia was in a Kickotan. But they're 2 bigs with Romello Baines and Elijah Washington, both over 6'6". If you have to defend not one guy over 6'6" can score a rebound, but 2, it is a problem. So I feel like they're going to be battle tested if they can get through that region. Now, that region's not going to be easy. They could run into a Phoebus, they could run into a Petersburg and be done in the 1st or 2nd round. But I'm looking at them as maybe the sleeper that you don't want to draw, whether you're Hopewell, a Northside, a Cave Spring, or even an Abingdon that could do a lot of damage. And maybe the most disrespected or forgotten about team in the entire state is Skyline, who's unbeaten. They've been great all year. Don't get the same test in their district that, Northside or Cave Spring or Lake Taylor or Hopewell or Petersburg gets. But Zach Diggs is a guard that can get buckets. And they've been pretty good for a couple of years ago. They've been knocking on the door. Guys, remember, they had a game with Independence a few years ago when Independence was down in Class 3. It went to triple overtime or 4 overtimes in the region final. And they have a couple holdovers from that team, including Diggs. So they're a team that I feel like is just going about its business quietly, and they haven't lost. So sometimes you don't know how good an undefeated team is because they haven't been beaten or faced adversity yet.
Yeah. How about Lafayette and Williamsburg, the old Peninsula District team? They've got a really good record.
They do. And it's funny talking about multi-sport athletes. They had a game here recently, guys, when they played Smithfield. I was there. Smithfield the place was rocking. It was just incredible. And they got out to a big lead to Lafayette. And it looked like Smithfield was coming back. Smithfield could not buy a 3-point shot. And the reason they couldn't buy a 3-point shot was Kamari Scott, who's a multi-sport football basketball player. He had 22 points, which was impressive. Kid brought down 23 rebounds and was just punishing in the paint.
Wow.
He is a problem. And they have a couple guards that push the basketball. They won that game 80-62. Kamari Scott is if you do not block him out, he's going to be a handful. Now, I don't know how they're going to match up with if they draw Phoebus with Jordan Leaks, who can score it from the guard spot, and they have a couple players in the paint that are no joke, or a Hopewell or a Petersburg in that 3A tournament. But that Region 3A tournament will be, I think, the most interesting tournament of the Class 3 field, even though you have teams that might win the state championship from 3B, 3C, or 3D. And obviously 3D people are circling because you have the likes of Northside and Cave Spring. 3A is going to be a tough bracket to get out of and get to states. And one more team I want to highlight that hasn't gotten a lot of love this year, and that would be Spotswood out of 3C. Chad Edwards is a veteran coach. They're really good. They play up-tempo basketball. He lost some pieces from a year ago, but most of his better pieces are underclassmen. One, in fact, is the younger brother of their stud from a year ago, Carmelo Pacheco. His little brother, Cameron Pacheco, is a 6'3" sophomore guard. He's already getting some Division I attention, putting up over 20 points per game. And their other starters are pretty much sophomore, junior with Jackson Lee, Rain Dean, John Harding, Tyler Sprague. So this is one of his deepest teams in years. And he got to a state championship about 7-8 years ago and lost when they were undefeated to Malik White and George Wythe. Malik White went on to play at Providence. So Spotswood's a team that won't be afraid of Northside or Cave Spring if they were to run into them in the state semis or state quarterfinals. And they have the ability to get through if those kids come of age.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. It just gets very good with 3 up. Now with 4, Kings Fork is just an incredible, to Rusty and I, that's a newer school because it wasn't around 35 years.
We're old, but that's
They opened in 2004, within the last 20 years. Exactly.
Right.
That's new, man. That is new.
No, hold on, no. Heritage and Woodside are new schools to us.
Oh, yeah.
And they were opened
new.
in 96.
Yeah. But Kings Fork, they're great. They're great in boys. They're great in girls. But, you've got Verina, EC Glass, great program. Tuscarora, which is right down the street from me. Western Albemarle, Loudoun County and Tuscarora are about as far apart as Kickintan and Phoebus. But what are your thoughts on, I would think Kings Fork, I know you've seen them play multiple times, is the favorite going into 4, but maybe I stand corrected.
No, I think they are the favorite, and you just nailed it. I mean, Tuscarora has been a nice story. They've got now 20 wins on the season after beating Heritage in the Dulles quarterfinals, and they're getting contributions from everybody from Jaden Johnson, a newcomer there at the guard spot, to Gavin O'Malley, Mike Davis, and in between. And EC Glass has got a 1,000-point score, and Omandre Harris, that's a kid that can light up for 30-plus or 40-plus if he gets really cooking. Scoring to basketball. The thing with Kings Fork is, going back to that depth thing, they have 8 or 9 different pieces that can go score in double figures. So you can't key in on just one player. If it's Sam Brennan at the guard spot, or if it's Sakai Darden, their athletic wing, if it is Coach Rick Height's son, Ryan Height, who is just one of the most physically put together guards, and he just draws charges every game. He's tough. He's got a football body, even doesn't play football. And they can go into their bench and not have a drop off. They're one of the few teams in Class 4 or below where their second unit could beat a lot of teams as starting units. And coming out of that Southeastern District, where they've got at least 4 or 5 other teams with at least 12-plus wins, when you talk about Oscar Smith in Class 6 and Western Branch from Class 6 and Nansman River from Class 5, and Great Bridgewood won 8 or 9 in a row at one point, and they handled them by about 40 points. They're going to be ready and battle tested, because even out of district, they've played, some nationally ranked teams, one out of Philadelphia. They've played more in an event, in a showcase. They've seen competition, and they've been through the gauntlet. And last year they were undefeated and fell to Verina in the state semis. I think the difference was last year, a couple things. One, Verina had home court for that matchup.
Yep.
2, they had Alfonso Fats Billups, who was maybe the most complete multi-dimensional player they had to face all season long, who could pass and impact the game with his passing, not just his scoring, but his ability to set other people up with his vision and distributing skills. And Verina was the more seasoned experienced team. I think Kings Fork's the more seasoned experienced team, whoever they play at this point in the Class 4 field. So they're the team to beat. It's going to take someone taking them out of their game, out of transition, getting them into foul trouble. I would almost equate them, and their coach has made this comparison. If you guys watch college basketball, I know you do. You watch the Houston Cougars, how physical they are on defense.
Yeah.
Like, people are picking Houston as a favorite to win the title, and rightfully so. Kelvin Sampson's got a terrific team that gets after you defensively. Kings Fork gets after you defensively. If they get into a game where the officiating calls it tight and a lot of fouls add up and they can't get their offensive engine going, that could spell trouble or doom for them. But unless they get into a game where the foul count goes totally against them, I feel like they're going to be in good shape, because they've been there before. Nothing should faze them, and they have a deep team that can beat you on the glass, get after you defensively, and just take you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. Any dark horses though? That maybe somebody's not thinking about.
There are a couple. I would tell you the one that jumps out at me is EC Glass because they were in states a season ago. I feel like, and it may not be a dark horse because they're highly ranked in our rankings, but I feel like in 4D, they don't get the attention that Kings Fork and Verona and some other teams do. They play a tempo game, so they won't be phased if they were running to Verona or Kings Fork in the championship. See, I think last year in Loudoun County as well, coached by Coach Alexander, I think what hurt Loudoun County in that state final at VCU was they achieved so much, they got into a game where they couldn't keep Verona in that score below 50. I think if EC Glass gets in a game that's 60 or above, they can function because they have guys that can shoot the 3 ball like Aiden Treacy. Omandre Harris can go get 25 or 30, and they have the ability to overcome a deficit. See, I think that's another thing it's important in playoff basketball, tournament basketball. You have to be able to erase a 10, 12-point deficit, and I think Glass is a team built to do that. I'm not sure some of the teams that play half-court style of games can do that, whether they play a Kings Fork or Verona or not. So they'd be the one I would circle if you told me to pick someone that doesn't win a championship besides Kings Fork. I might even pick EC Glass to win it over Verona.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just going to point out for up here. I've seen Tuscarora play a couple times. They lost to Stonebridge at the buzzer at Tuscarora. I think if those two played now, I think things have come up. But Tuscarora, and I've been feverishly looking up, they've got a nice left-handed guard that's a lot of fun to watch. He's a scorer. Left-handed guard, very hard to guard.
I think it's Jaden Johnson. He's the one I believe is the lefty. Yeah,
I think it is Jaden. Hey, Jaden, I'm sorry. I should have prepared for that, but yeah.
Hold on, y'all. Hold on. And I'm not going to take this out. I'm not going to clip this out. Matt Hatfield is rattling off these names right off the dome. He lives in southeastern Virginia. Kirk lives right down the street from this other kid. And he's like, I saw this kid play. I think it's this. And Matt goes, bam. Amazing. So
Matt
does this
for a living.
Matt, let me just tell you something, Matt. I trust you, but bruh, you could totally be making up all these names and stats, and people would be like, yeah.
I wouldn't want to face Matt on Jeopardy.
I wouldn't want to. Hey, look, I would not want to fact check you because I know you're right, but you could do this in the next 70 years, even if you have dementia. People would think, okay, if Matt said it, you'd be like, and Ralph Sampson out of Harrisonburg, he's going to make this kid is a 2038 recruit. But go ahead, man.
But you got those though. If you get a name wrong, we will hear from a parent or a player.
Oh, yeah.
Trust me. If it ain't Jaden Johnson, that mom or that dad or that uncle is going to let us know. So that's for sure. We'll get that name eventually.
Bro, I'm giving you your props because I'm like, if you are the man, like I don't at any level, I haven't seen anybody be able to do this. But go ahead.
I would just point out, just coming from Loudoun County and me being able to see a lot of the teams is Loudoun County High School, the captains, very well coached. Ever since I've been watching them play, they don't necessarily have a go-to guy. It seems like they have a lot of good size, heady players. They have a very, very fun offense, a lot of motion offense. I had a feeling against Verona last year that they would get eaten up with the athletic ability. And I don't mean that as a put down. I just think if County could get like a really good power forward with some beef, the way they run their offense, they are so much fun to watch. And they played tonight. I'm going to try to see them play when they play next. But also just before we go to 5, I did want to point out that, we're talking about a great team down in Lynchburg, Jefferson Forest, GW Danville. Those are great, great programs. And King George, are any of those football players playing basketball?
Well, two things. You're right, Kirk. Mekhi White, the stud receiver for King George, I've been following some of his stats this year. He had like a game where he had 22 rebounds as well. So he is a problem to box out in that Battlefield district where you have Eastern View and Cortland. And you're spot on about Loudoun County there, Kirk, because I got some stats last year. We do a lot of the previews for the state playoffs on Virginia Preps. And before they played Verona, one of the assistant coaches for Mark Alexander sent to me. And they're very meticulous about their numbers. They're one of the few schools that they do like shot charts. I mean, they're really in depth with how they prepare and their scouting. And if they get a player, we were talking about this before we went on recording this, Kirk. If they got like Loudoun Valley, who won a state championship several years back with Chad Dawson, when they had Jordan Miller, who now plays at Miami, if they got a flashy wing, there's a 6'6" post that has that above the rim athleticism, they'll be a state championship team, no doubt about it. They're just missing that one guy who's a difference maker, bona fide dude.
Yeah. It's almost like all of them will shoot it from 25, 30 feet.
Right.
They
Very
are
balanced.
fun to watch.
Yeah, very
So
balanced.
moving to 5, which I made a comment on another segment that we did that I think 5, top to bottom, not necessarily the top, but top to bottom, it's the best class. And I know, 6, 5, 4, even 3 is debatable, but we've got Menchville, Lamont Struthers, same age as us, went to Forest Glen, I believe, in Suffolk. Great career, Christopher Newport, professional player. He's a friend of our show. But you've got Patrick Henry Roanoke there too. That's a great team. Kickatam, we know Woodside was able to beat, was it Gonzaga, Rusty? They beat Gonzaga. Yeah. I saw Albemarle play last year, and Riverside beat them, but they were a good-looking team. What do you think's going to happen with that top-heavy, like Menchville, Patrick Henry, Roanoke? Menchville got tripped up by Maury this year. I don't think that's going to be an obstacle. Give us your overall thoughts about Class 5.
Year in and year out, you're absolutely right. Class 5 is the deepest and strongest. I would tell you this. I don't know that it's as super tough and you see a dominant team, even though Menchville's undefeated. And I think Lamont's doing an awesome job, and he's got 2 Division I players. His son, Etienne Struthers, who's going to Appalachian State. His older son, Allen's at East Tennessee State now, and AJ Clark, who's maybe the best defensive guard wing in the entire state, regardless of division. He straps up on defense and locks people up. He's going to VMI. They don't have that, huge big man, but they play with guards. They defend. They play fast. They're so well coached. What I fear for Menchville guys is, and Rusty, you probably know this coming from the PD, Kickatam last year, and I know Willie Gauze, a good friend of ours, came on the show last year, and he was unbeaten. And he lost at Scope to Menchville. Menchville might be 22-0 as the 1 seed at the Norfolk Scope and have to play the winner of Woodside Norview in the semifinals. It's almost so unfair. Menchville could be 22-0 and have to beat Woodside, who is a really great team with a lot of talent, for a 3rd time just to make states. Meanwhile, and I don't mean to hate on Region 5A, there's some good coaches and players. 5A is going to have teams that, take 5B, for example. Right now, the seeds are pretty much set. It's going to be Menchville, the 1, Kickatam, the 2 seed. Willie Gauze is doing another great job without his top scorer who's injured right now, and Justin Bass. They're going to be 19-3 most likely. You got Maury, the 3 seed, Woodside, the 4, Norview, the 5, Nansman, the 6. Nansman River could finish up 15-7, 16-6. They would be maybe the 1 or 2 seed in 5A, where you have Princess Anne, Cox, Tallwood, Kempsville, Indian River, Green Run, who's been good in the past, a little bit young right now. They had those 2 great guards a couple years ago, and Elijah Kennedy went to Florida. Jacob Cooper is now at Lander. Tallwood, I mentioned them. You have Salem out of Virginia Beach, and First Colonial or Bayside is the 8 seed. But you could take any one of those 6 teams in 5B, and they're winning 5A. I'm sorry, all you schools I just mentioned, they're winning 5A.
Wow.
Someone's going to lose in those semifinals. I mean, take Maury, for example. Maury's got to go through another gauntlet to get back to the state finals, where they played Highland Springs and lost to Heartbreakers. So it's going to be hard to project. There's no clear-cut favorite, even with Menchville being unbeaten, even with Woodside having beaten Gonzaga, even with Patrick Henry being as good as they are at 21-2, 22-2, because guess what? Their 2 losses have come to William Fleming, who beat them by 2 one-possession games, and Fleming can go beat them again. So you got them, you got Albemarle. I would tell you that 5A, as good as it is, it's the most up for grabs. I don't feel comfortable or confident in picking any team to win it, because you put a blanket over them. Those 10, 12 teams, any one of them could do it.
Good point. How about Richmond with LC Byrd, Highland Springs, who won it last year? I'm a little surprised they've had 6 losses. And then you've also got Glen Allen. What do you think about coming out of that area, that region?
Good question. I just saw LC Byrd last Friday lose a heartbreaker to Manchester, their Dominion District rival, who in Class 6 completed the regular season at 21-1 and handed Manchester its lone loss back in January at Byrd. Byrd has been known for its guard play. Troy Mans is a terrific coach, tactician. He knows how to work the game. He gets kids to the next level. He's got so many playing college ball. Kenny Williams was one of them. He had Mario Haskett, Pinky Wiley, Cam Henry was at Indiana State, Charles Spalding. List goes on and on. This team's not as deep as some of his other teams were. He relies a lot on his son, Yuri Mans, who can stroke it. He's getting some Division I looks from both Radford and Old Dominion. But if Yuri is off or someone can double team him, I'm not sure who else is going to beat them. They're going to need some other players to step up. They have a 6'7" guy inside of Brett Dent. They have some other guards that are capable, but I don't know if they can sustain it to go win the state championship. I think they can win Region 5C. Now, last year, the tournament was at Highland Springs, which was a huge edge for Highland Springs, who won it and had a veteran group, explosive scorer in Denzel Coles, who's back, right around 25 a game for Reggie Tennyson Springers, who won it last year. They have a couple of those football players like Christian Martin, the quarterback, that plays some hoops. But this year, the tournament, I believe, is at Midlothian. It's not at Highland Springs' gym for the semis and finals, at least. So that would make it a neutral court feeling. I feel like Highland Springs and Byrd are good enough to beat anybody in that bracket. I don't know if I'd label them the favorite. I think your champion's going to probably come out of 5B or 5D. So if you told me I don't know if I'm going to pick a team, but I would tell you that I feel better about calling the champ coming out of either 5B, that bracket with Menchville, Woodside, Morey, Norview, and so on, or 5D, the bracket with Albemarle, Fleming, Patrick Henry. I think you might see the champions or whoever's left from that gauntlet, that, battle royale, standing to face each other at VCU.
Yeah. It's funny. The kid from Highland Springs, Danzel Bullock Coles, he is another player that's very fun to watch. He's got a lot of moves. When they played up here, Rusty, at Potomac High School, I made sure I was down on the floor. I do this all the time, by the way, at games. I just want to see how big a player is when they stand next to me. So football players, I do it. He's about 6'1" because I'm 6'2". If he's 6'2", fine, he's 6'2". But if he were 6'4", 6'5", he would be much bigger on the recruiting. The thing is that but he is so much fun to watch because he gets that ball, takes it out, and he's got a lot of moves, and you can isolate him. He can make the pass. And Christian Martin is a bruiser also, plays like a football player, very heady player. But I agree with you. I think that the Menchville region, that's going to be fun. And I think that's going to be a good one. So now we actually, teaser, we're going to put this episode out tomorrow, but we interviewed Coach Carlos Poindexter of Hayfield tonight. And that is a fantastic team. In 6, the defending state champions. They've got one loss to Jackson Reed, which is the old Wilson High School, and DC, the alma mater of one Warren Buffett, by the way. Didn't go to a hoity-toity private school, went to public school. But talk about 6. We got Battlefield and Patriot. They're going to beat up on each other. Some great teams, Northern Virginia. We want to hear about, Lansdown and Oscar Smith down there. But what's your overall take on somebody upending Hayfield? Because I see Hayfield winning it again.
I do too. I think they're more talented, Kirk and Rusty, than they were a season ago. They might not be as cohesive as last year's group with Braylon Wheeler and Ashton Pratt to go with those 3 starting returnees in Greg Jones, the American commit, David King, who's one of the favorite players in the state to watch. This kid, somehow he's got such terrific footwork. He doesn't look like a basketball player, but he's undersized and he just gets it done all the time. He's going to Marymount. And then you got the Division II commit in the Belmont Abbey and DJ Holloway, who's been named player of the year. He defends, he scores in transition. He's fun to watch. They added a couple new guards this year. Donovan Bass Briscoe came in from West Potomac, who can get buckets and lock up defensively. They've got a deeper team. They use their bench more this season, as I'm sure Coach Poindexter has highlighted to you guys. But I think they're beatable. I think the pressure is off of that win streak being snapped at 40 in a row. So I think that takes it. Last year they were undefeated. They had the Boots 32-0 to win it. I just got done watching Patriot and Battlefield last week in that Cedar Run playoff game to decide the championship. And Patriot was hitting threes. Now, I don't know if they'll shoot the ball from 3 as well as they did that night. Sherman Rivers has a really good group with experience back. They played Hayfield to a very close game early in the season. The opener, in fact, went down to the wire and Hayfield pulled it out on a Bass Briscoe game winner. But 6 is going to be really tough again. I in some respects, you can make a case that this is a year where the difference between 6 and 5, usually it's 5 up here, 6 is right there. It might be about equal this year. Yeah. I think there are some teams towards the bottom of the top 10 that can make noise. Manchester's 21-1. I mentioned from Richmond. They got some pieces with Makai Byerson, the big bruiser defensive end from football who plays in the post. He's got about 12, 15 plus offers at least. And then you got out of Tidewater, Oscar Smith and Lansdowne. Oscar Smith's lone loss was to Kings Fork. They've got a big guy inside who's explosive, and Kareem Stagg, a sophomore. They have guards that can shoot the 3. And Lansdowne gets after it defensively. And this is probably Dwight Robinson's best coaching job, considering he lost his stepson and Donald Hand Jr. to BC. He's starting 2 freshmen, and he has not lost a beach game this season. Has not lost anybody in the state outside of John Marshall, who everybody would lose to just about. So they're really good. They can defend. I wonder about them scoring enough against some of those teams and maybe being a year away. I've highlighted some teams that are probably a year away when you think about Lansdowne of winning the title, possibly, a Lake Taylor of winning the title, possibly, and a couple others out there in various divisions. But they're going to compete regardless, whether they're ready or not for this year. Those young kids sometimes, freshmen and sophomores, they're not freshmen and sophomores come tournament time. They don't know any better. So I think Hayfield's the team to beat because they can beat you in so many different ways. They're going to need, though, Greg Jones has not been known to have to score a lot. I think in tournament time, people that scout him well enough now are going to say, all right, Greg, you're such an unselfish, good player. We're going to need you to score more. There's some teams are going to really scout them and make them do some things out of their comfort zone, take away some of the shooters, make them drivers, different things to Hayfield. So I'm curious to see what adjustments they make. Carlos is a terrific coach. I think they'll make the right adjustments. But if you told me a Patriot or an Oscar Smith or a Battlefield or somebody knocked them off, it would not stun me because it is so hard to repeat. And I think a lot of those games will be close and down to the wire. Remember, even last year, they played a game with WT Woods, and it was like a 6 to 8 point game. So
great program.
We'll see in their tournament. I mean, just that tournament alone in Occoquan. Fairfax has a guy who can go get buckets in Margod Choi Jolson. You got South County, who is going to win, in my opinion, another state championship under Mike Robinson. They have a lot of good freshmen and sophomores. They've been a little injured prone this year. Jamison Lyman was out for a while, their point guard. They got him back now. So there's some teams that will test them. Now, can they handle those tests and pass them? Yes, because they played a very competitive schedule. Those kids are unselfish, they're experienced, and they're good. So I'd take Hayfield, but if you took a flyer on somebody else, it wouldn't stun me. That's almost like a March Madness bracket where they're the team to beat, but someone could knock them off.
Yeah, and we've talked to Coach Poindexter a couple of times, and we've had Coach Rivers, Sherman Rivers of Patriot on. I watched that game. It was a 2-point game. I think Hayfield, based on some of the teams they'll need to beat to get to the state finals, being made basically a Northern Virginia, Fairfax, Alexandria area. I can see Hayfield getting to the finals, but I think if Patriot can beat who's ever coming out of the 757, they're going to need to be at home. What I mean is Patriot needs to have somebody, even come Lansdowne or whether it's Manchester, somebody from the other parts of that of Region A come be on the road. And I think if Patriot can beat them, I think Patriot can beat Hayfield in the final. But one of the things I've noticed about Patriot, and you touched on it, is are they hitting threes? I've seen some games where they didn't even shoot them, but they had, I think the freshmen they have, I'm not good with names like you, I can make up a name, but they have, and Dwight Vick's son, Isaiah Vick, I've seen him get hot, and he hit a number of threes against Battlefield. I think that if Patriots at home and they can beat that runner-up from the 757, I think they can beat Hayfield because of the schedule that Patriot has played.
Yeah, and you make a good point, Rusty. I mean, if someone zones them up and they're not hitting threes, they were like 10 of 17 that night against Battlefield. If you go back, I think we tweeted out the stats, you can find it. And that freshman Kai Wilcox was 3 of 3. He had 2 big ones in the second quarter. That game pretty much stretched out when he hit them. They have a lot of different parts, though, going back to that depth thing. They have Nasir Coleman, they got Vic, they got Caden Bates, they got Desmond Hopkins. They have so many different guys that can score 14 to 22 points and beat you. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, Makai Diller, Jay Randall, they have different guys that can step up and beat you. And I think Battlefield's another team. We look at them and they were 21-1 regular season, like Manchester. They have a way about them. They don't have a flashy guy that you say, oh, he's a 25, 30 point per game guy. And that's even with Hassan Hamad, who's committed to CNU. They're just a well-knit team that they know their roles. They don't play with, outside their limitations. So that's the thing. Patriot might have to avoid seeing Battlefield again, who beat them last year.
Yeah.
If they got through it to see Hayfield, they won't be afraid of Hayfield because they played them close and almost beat them on the road. So I think that fear factor is a big deal. Sometimes Hayfield's getting, and this is a credit to Coach Poindexter and his program, it's like the John Marshall effect. When a team walks in the gym, you guys know this from football, they have that jersey on, it's already like you're down 10 points. And I think Hayfield's getting that mentality now. But there's a couple teams, the two I mentioned, Patriot being one, and South County another one, that won't be afraid of them if they were to see them. So I think that's going to be a big key. And if Patriot did have to go to the 757 to play an Oscar Smith or a Lansdowne or possibly, I don't know that they'll be necessarily at a disadvantage, but it would be a harder draw for them to have to do that as a region runner-up, so forth in the state quarters, even though Sherman has beat up the schedule by playing some teams like LC Byrd and others in the non-district.
Let me tell you something, man. I will also say this. If Battlefield is on the road and they're down playing Battlefield,
I was going to say, we're not giving them the respect they need.
Battlefield is definitely the Hoosiers. I was going to ask you Hoosiers because they don't look the part, but those guys ball. And I'm not going by the color of their skin. I'm just going by nobody just looks like a basketball player.
The fundamental.
Hamad Hassan, who's going to Christopher Newport, is the best basketball player I've seen.
So fundamental.
He doesn't jump out of the gym, but he was playing Patriot the other night. He would get down on the low post, and it was like you think the kid was not guarding him properly, and he was turning around and banking it in. He's a very heady player. And I was just getting ready to say, we're sleeping on Battlefield. They're a very good team. I think as far as talent goes, if they're playing a very talented team that's playing well, like Patriot, that's going to be tough. But don't count Battlefield out.
I'm telling you, bro. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Somebody's going to do this. They're going to look at the guys. They're going to look at the roster, and they're going to say, the best players, Division III. No, those guys ball. And he's going to CNU, but that dude can play. I mean, he can play Division II. Yeah,
he's filled out physically. He's
and I'm telling you, somebody's going to be like, "Oh, they're playing this guy. He's Division I, and this and this and this," and they don't quit. They never quit.
It reminds me a lot, guys, of like they also have beside Hassan Hamad, Ryan Derdarian. I was actually talking with a coach from the 757 of the day and this tells you how fundamental and well coached they are too, because Randall Bills came from Robinson. He's done a good job at Battlefield. They've been in the state tournament multiple times. A coach from the 757 says that the coaches up there are raving about just how good Hamad and Derdarian are, just playing fundamental, smart basketball. Basketball IQ is something that sometimes is missing in tournament games. They've got it. They're not going to get outsmarted, outfoxed, or out-hustled in a big spot. So they're going to be prepared. And that tournament can go a lot of different ways. 6B can, 6A can, 6C can. The bracket is kind of the mystery bracket is 6D, where you have Madison, another team that controls tempo, well coached. South Lakes might have guys. Remember his name, Jordan Scott at South Lakes.
We talked about him tonight.
South Lakes is going to be the player that people are talking about the next 12 to 24 months. I'm telling you right now, I watched him in AAU with Virginia Elite. And this kid is special. Son of Christy Winter Scott, by the way. He is
Jerome Scott was a very good player too on South Lake.
Absolutely.
Back in the days. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Michigan State's already recruiting this kid. He is special. I watched him in an AAU game get 25, 30 points. He's got some, and they might be another team that's a year away from winning the championship. But if he gets hot on a night, we could be talking about, whoa, Jordan Scott dropped 42 and South Lakes beat such and such in double overtime. And Battlefield is like the WT Woodson team from a few years ago. Doug Craig, another outstanding coach that won the championship. Remember, they won that championship a few years ago for C.D. Hilton, and they were like 7-0 in overtime games. If Battlefield gets in a close game or overtime, don't count them out. But the one that I think is going to be fun to watch is South Lakes, because Scott can put on a show.
Yeah. And it's funny because I was about to say, but we went to it. We're leaving out South Lakes. Great program. Mike Desmond, this will age me. I started, once I got my out of college partying done and was starting to settle down, I adopted South Lakes as my school. And I used to go see him play Chantilly, where Mike Desmond was a great little guard. I think he went to Lynchburg. And I remember, I go to games by myself. I've never met a stranger. I always talk to them, but I'm talking to a group of men. And I said to one guy, they got a great little guard. It was Mike Desmond's dad. And now Mike Desmond has gray in his goatee and all that. So, but and the other one is Marshall, the statesman, right inside Washington Liberty. That will be good. But I also, before we part, I wanted to make sure, do you think a team outside of Northern Virginia can make it to the finals in VCU?
Oh, that's a good question. I think a team can, but right now I'm not confident enough one will, because here's the crazy part. There might not be a team, but just a two from 6A that gets to the state quarters, and then your state Final Four could very well be all Nova with the way it's broken off. And Lansdowne and Oscar Smith, they're good, but some of their better players are freshmen, sophomore, juniors. Manchester might not get out of the region, out of Richmond, and they're no joke. So I would say, yes, it could happen, but I would say if I had to give you a percent, I'd say 60-40 no. It would be my choice. 60-40 no.
So I'm going to, as we started out, I'm going to go on record. I think that Hayfield will win. But there's a little bit of a lack of depth there. So Patriot does have a nice rotation, has a lot of players. They can go big with like 3-6-6 they had it the other night against Battlefield. They had three guys that could play that were 6'6", so they can go big and small. They've got some depth. But I would close with this, and I'll let you close out, Rusty, on 6. Patriot still has some lapses where for 3, 4, 5 minutes they go cold, and they don't make good decisions shooting. That's not a criticism of Coach Rivers or the kids. It's just they know that, sure. And if they can eliminate that, they can beat Hayfield. But I do like Hayfield. Rusty, what's your thoughts on that dynamic between Hayfield and then the other Northern Virginia teams, namely Battlefield and Patriot?
Well, I like Hayfield just from the standpoint, again, they have played a really tough schedule. You look, the team, I mean, their one loss is to a private school that's had a great year. And kind of the same thing can be said for Patriot. I mean, they lost, I think they lost to two good private schools, and then one loss to Battlefield, who was undefeated, and Battlefield's only losses are to Patriot. I think that we're going to see a Patriot Hayfield final, and I like Patriot to win. I mean, it was a 2-point game, and they've both been through it. But I mean, Sherman Rivers can coach his butt off. So not the point this to Kent, but I just, I think that this might be the year. This Patriot team has some quality leadership and seniors, and then they've got some length, and I like their young guys too. I just like what Patriots do.
Yeah. Isaiah Vick will be a Power 5 player. Maybe not North Carolina Duke, but you never know. He is next year, his development over the summer. He reminds me of Dennis Rodman. He's like
blossoming, no doubt.
Yeah, but he can jump. When I say he can jump, not just a vertical, but he can jump. Get like I'll jump people 3 or 4 times. You can't coach that. In my opinion, you can't teach it. He's got that in his outside game from 20 to 25 feet, by the way. He can stroke the jumper, and he's going to be given more. But I like Coach Poindexter and Hayfield. Any guys?
I do want to hit. Can we just? Who should we be listening for? I mean, look on the lookout for in girls basketball from each. Yeah. If there's who, and it doesn't have, you don't have to cover each class, but just who are some of the schools? And I'll tell you, we're right here in Prince William County, and OP, an unbelievable job that Chrissy Kelly has done. Over 300 wins, 2 state championships when she was at Forest Park. But dog, this Gainesville program, only a second-year school, and they've beaten OP. I mean, so I've seen these 2 teams, and then I still referee high school basketball now. I had Coach Lewis, Diane Lewis, over at Edison, and they're starting to figure it out. But go ahead.
It's funny you say it because they're giving up just about 36 points per game. And my radio co-host, Ed Young, was at the Boo Williams tournament, and he mentioned Edison and Hampton was a really good game. Shauna Bailey's got a good team at Hampton with Kennedy Harris leading the way, George Mason signee. So I think playing some of those tournaments help teams like that. The girls class 6 tournament is going to be fun because Madison's been that defending champ here multiple years running. Yep. They could certainly get beat by a Robinson or an Edison or an Osborne Park, or Gainesville could be that Cinderella story. I mean, they're 20-2 now, I think it is, but they're no joke. In Class 5, it's going to be fascinating in Tidewater, guys, because you got the legendary Darnell Dozier, who's got more rings than you can have fingers.
Oh my gosh,
on his toes now. He's got a great player in Zakiya Stevenson, a guard going to Ole Miss. I don't know if he has the depth and pieces around her this year to win the championship, but he can keep anybody from winning the championship, and I'm not counting him out. No way am I counting that guy out. He is a wizard. And he's got more jewelry than they have at jewelry stores with all his rings. Menchville's the favorite. They've got Amari Smith who's going to Morgan State. They got some pieces back from that championship run. Norview's a team to watch out for. Jonathan Wilson, his team plays hard. Diamond Wiggins, they play fast. They can be physical with you at times. They've come from that rugged Eastern District. So Class 5 could be the most fun tournament. Class 4, Kingsport's got Soraya Griffin, their defending champ. Yeah. Watch out for Manor out of Portsmouth. Watch out for Hampton, as I mentioned, on the peninsula. I think whoever comes out of Region 4A probably wins the championship, although I'm not going to count out Pulaski out there. I'm not going to count out Tuscarora from up north. Another team I wouldn't count out in Class 5 to make a run to the finals from up north is Woodgrove, who always has a good program up there. Yep. And as you move down to smaller levels, I'll watch out for Carroll County, watch out for Floyd County, a couple of programs that are always in the hunt, seem to be. And Robin Dotson at Central Wise, this guy just won his 700th victory earlier this year. Congrats to him. He's a Hall of Famer. He has a team that is just lights out. In fact, last year, it's interesting to note, he won the championship coming from double digits down. His best player, Emma McCamus, as a freshman, scored 683 points. She's back. They added a transfer from Grundy who puts up 17 and 16 a game last year, Madison Looney. Central Wise could be the team. If you're there at state championship week at VCU for the finals, you walk away and say, this Central Wise team is for real, because his best girls are sophomore, junior. They will be a handful in Class 2, and I think is the definite favorite. So a few teams to watch out for on the west side that are pretty good, and then your usual suspects from Nova and Tidewater and even Richmond, a couple teams. We never count out Franklin Harris at Highland Springs as well.
What real quick, what about Roanoke has great teams on the boys side. How about girls? Any competitive teams out there that could make a run?
You know, it's interesting on the girls' side from Roanoke. I think last year we saw it was kind of quiet. They had EC Glass. Well, that's more Lynchburg than Roanoke, but
same thing,
I don't think there's a real dynamite team that I would point out to. I mean, your best bet is Carroll County in Class 3. They scored 106 points in a state quarterfinal game last year. I forget who it was against, but they were just phenomenal in that game. They're probably the best pick. I mean, you have some teams out there. You know, if you go into more Southwest, Gate City is a program that's always well known and competitive. There's not one that's jumping out at me as a definite team that gets it done. And one I didn't want to leave out too is Millbrook from Class 4. They've been in the championship round before. They had a thrilling game with Lake Taylor a few years back, if you recall. They're battle tested and they're used to some of these spots. So I was keeping an eye on Pulaski and Millbrook in Class 4. You know, one's in that Winchester area, one in that Roanoke area. And then Carroll County's the one out there in Roanoke for girls that's really been, you know, drawing rave reviews for the last couple of years. I think they won the championship at like 25-1, 26-1 last year, and they've got some pieces back.
All right. Well, I just wanted to close off with, please subscribe to us and make comments. We screen them for foul language. Anything that's distasteful, we're not going to put on. But you can tell.
I don't care. Put it out.
I do.
Put the foul language out there.
Yeah, but anyway, what I'm saying is we don't.
If you have a good
we're
point.
clueless. You can call us stupid. You can call us idiots. Just keep the F-bombs out of it. And also Hatfield Sports and then VA Preps. There's great content there. Make sure you check that out. I think we've had a lot of good material where we've probably given some bulletin board material, but we've not flamed anybody. It's a great time of year. I love basketball. Football is king in Virginia. Sorry, it's just that way. This is not Indiana or North Carolina, but
no, hold on, Kirk. Football is king, period. Ask ESPN. It's like we love these other sports, but football is king. Like they're going to talk about the Cowboys and football all year and get more ratings than they would even for ACC basketball. But yeah, so it's not you basketball, it's not you baseball, but just football is. Yeah, it's taking over. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So, please check us out, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you at VCU in just a few weeks now, right?
Yeah,
it'll be here soon. Guys, I look forward to it as well. One more closing note I would point out is that, you know, I think people say, oh, you want this team. I don't really care who wins. I'm sure you guys feel the same way. I'm looking for great stories, compelling action, and buzzer beaters and fun galore. When I go to a game, I look for people say, oh, you want, I'm like, no, what I want is I worry about how good the game is as far as I want it to be competitive, exciting, and then what I'm going to eat afterwards. That's what I care about.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
No, I'm a little biased. So if it's Bethel,
okay. Well, you went there. You're allowed to be. You're allowed to with that.
Yeah, I always, and I saw them play in the Iverson class, showcase. But anyway, thanks again, Matt. Look, I want you to one more time plug everything you're doing. Like you're doing a lot. Can you just you do ODU? Mention some of the things you're doing.
I appreciate that. And a quick shout out to your coach at Bethel, Craig Breon. He's an awesome dude. I know he's had some health issues in the past, but he's doing a lot better. And we love Craig. And he's over 400 wins. He's in that great group of coaches in Tidewater and 757. And they've done some wonderful things at Bethel. I think they'll continue to do so. They can check me out on Twitter at Hatfield Sports, VirginiaPreps.com with the Rivals Network powered by Yahoo Sports. Listen to us on Saturday mornings, 10 a.m. to 12 noon on 94.1 FM, ESPN Radio. You can find us there. I do some writing for the Suffolk News Herald and Farmville Herald as well. And I'm also on the road with the OD women's basketball as we get ready for the Sun Belt tournament in Pensacola, guys. So I'll be following all the updates and tweets from you guys and others while I'm in Pensacola during the regionals. I'll get back by about state semifinal time because we have 2 road games with Marshall and Coastal Carolina before the tournament, but I'll be looking forward to the states, and I'll be missing some of the exciting regional games. I'll have to be watching them on the network and through streams while I'm not there.
We'll tweet.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hey, so
Emmett Smith, big thing out of Pensacola, by the way. Emmett Smith.
Yeah.
Pensacola guy.
Hey, look, man, thanks again, Matt. And for those who are watching this, and again, Matt is extremely knows stuff, but he's legit a good dude. Like, I'm looking up to Matt, like, oh, he's amazing. And then when I met him for the first time, he was extremely personable. We could talk just like we're talking here. He could talk, but some people, they put out one image, but I'm telling y'all straight up, Matt's a great dude. And I've had the pleasure of being around him at games, after games, and he speaks and he's giving his opinion. And then he's like, and I feel like, hey, I know Matt Hatfield, just like I can say, I know Larry Rubama. So, hey, I thank you again for being on our show. You make us legit. Because that's why I told Kirk, I was like, let's just listen, because we're going to learn. And then you know what I'm going to do? When I'm on somebody else's show, on our show, I'm just going to spit your facts.
Well, that's very kind of you, Kirk, Rusty. I appreciate that from both you and Kirk. You guys are awesome as well. Larry's a super dude. I love going to a football game or gym and getting chatted up with him. Sometimes I'm sitting there and I know he's got to go to work, and we end up talking for 20, 30 minutes, not getting stuff done that we need to get accomplished. More so probably him than me, because he's got a deadline with the newspaper more than I have. But no, it's always neat to go somewhere. And anytime someone sees me, feel free to come up to me and approach me. I'm always willing to chat. And I appreciate what you guys do to highlight the high school sports and the sports across the state and beyond. It's well needed and much appreciated.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
And one last plug, Julian Brown puts out a lot of stuff, and he's got a lot of high school. He's got UVA ties. He knows just about everybody up here. And if he doesn't know him, he'll get to him. He just put something out the other day. Rusty, I haven't been able to check it out yet, on the whole Northern Virginia and all the teams. So I would recommend checking out Julian also. And then I'm sitting here feverishly trying to find the kid that you popped off for Tuscarora, the left-handed guard. Help me out. Jaden, or what is it?
Johnson. Yeah, Jaden Johnson.
Jaden Johnson. He's fun. I love kids that come out and have that swagger. I don't like it when they're cocky, but he's got a little thing like, hey, man, I'm gonna drop one on you. I love watching kids like that. So, all right, Matt. Rusty, take us out, brother.
All right. So once again, it has been a great, that's the thing. You should get your instead of like Mr. or Dr., just great Matt Hatfield has been our guest. And for my dog, Kirk Hilliard, this has been the Kirk and Byrd Show covering high school hoops. We are out.